welcome to 404s of the World, a spin-off series of remarkable engines where I briefly cover the history of an engine numbered 404 in 4 minutes and 4 seconds. In an unusual turn, we'll be focusing on our first narrow-gauge engine and one of a handful of engines constructed in the 19th century for one of the most iconic steam railroads of its time, namely the Denver Rio Grande Western. Even though there isn't anything too special with this particular engine, its history is mostly well documented as it was part of a significant class on the Rio Grande's expansive narrow-gauge steam roster. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Our story starts 10 years after the formation of the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, all the way back in 1881, as the narrow-gauge railroad was rapidly expanding its trackage and roster across the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Based on initial success with earlier engines, they once again reached out to Baldwin Locomotive Works, one of the most trustworthy manufacturers of steam locomotives at the time, to construct their second class of 280 consolidation type engines, one of the newest type of wheel arrangements at the time in order to better handle increasing freight loads. What resulted was the C19 class, or 70 class, with C designating consolidation, 19 representing 19,000 pounds of tractive effort, and 70 for 70,000 pounds of weight, as these engines are essentially upgraded versions of the previous 60 class. A total of 18 engines were built, as they were numbered 400 to 422, with 404 being built towards the beginning of the first batch and was named Sevier, as the C19 class just so happened to have the exact same numbering range as the LIRR DE30AC class that this series is based on. These engines almost immediately entered road freight service on the railroad's Gunnison extension from Salida to Gunnison via Marshall Pass, with grades up to 4%, as despite being the most modern engines in the country, they still had all the traits of a classic 1800s Wild West steam engine, namely short smoke boxes, diamond stacks, large kerosene headlights, ornate dome rings, and wooden paneled cabs. While other members of the C19 class were converted to standard gauge and received other modifications, 404 continued to work a rather unnoteworthy service life, with the exception of surviving a roundhouse fire with 285 in Salida, Colorado in 1892, while occasionally being seen with a comically large snowplow on its front to help clear the tracks during the winter. Eventually, the turn of the 20th century brought forth many changes for the C19 class, as the Rio Grande modernized them with several new features, including steel boilers, extended smoke boxes, early electric headlights, and straight smokestacks. Later on, the Rio Grande reorganized into the Denver and Rio Grande Western in 1921, as the C19s were renumbered in the 340s range a few years later, with 404 being renumbered to 344, but continuing to essentially serve the same tasks as before, this time with several modern parts. But despite the somewhat recent refurbishment, 344 was one of many engines that were sidelined during the late 30s as a result of slower traffic due to the Great Depression, as the Rio Grande had no choice but to ultimately scrap 344 in 1939 along with a few other C19s in order to obtain a bit more money through scrap value. But despite a rather quiet end to an unnoteworthy member of the C19 class, thankfully a total of 4 C19s survive into preservation across the former Rio Grande system, namely numbers 340, 346, 409, and 420, as although 404 itself didn't last into preservation, it was still one of many influential engines that made up the expansive roster of the Rio Grande. Thank you again for watching. Credit for all the photos used go to their respective photographers, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe for more. Have a good day.